Well, good morning. We want to go to the Lord in prayer this morning. Do we have somebody who would like to offer God a prayer for us this morning? Don't be bashful. If not, I'll do it. Be happy to. So, have anybody? Sure, Lloyd. Thank you, Lord. Amen. That's a beautiful day God has given us today. Has everybody got a book? Okay. Looks like nobody missed it. That's good. I'm glad you did. I wanted to talk about the book just a little bit, lay it out for you. This is just a guide. You'll be going through this with me on the CD. And this is just for you to make notes in, to keep it. And when we go back and do the documents on the CD, when you fill those out, you'll have some notes to go along with you, so it'll help you with the process. So this is going to be your guide. So I'm going to tell you things. You just might want to just put a little note in there. Might want to write something down every now and then on your book, on the page we're dealing with, so that when you go to do this, it'll make it easier for you. So if there's anything that's vague or questionable, we will talk about those things. Now, we're going to talk about our documents today, and we'll go through them step by step, how to do the documents, and a lot of information about the documents. I will ask if you'll hold questions, if you'll write your questions down and pass them up. At the end of each document, we will answer your questions. That way we'll be able to go through this and still get through the information and answer all your questions at the same time. Because if we start asking questions with this many people, believe me, it'll take a while. You'll find out that when you have a question, that many times I'll answer it before we get through the document. Not always, but usually I do. And we'll cover a lot of stuff today. A lot of information is going to be thrown at you. But it's really not complicated. It's very simple and very easy. Now you'll see that your book is in 4 sections. Section 1, 2, 3, and 4. And Section 1 we refer to as the freedom documents. Now the freedom documents, the purpose, sorry, I get a little loud every now and then, but the freedom documents, their purpose is to establish your status. Most of us are debtors to the corporation. Most of us are debtors to the corporation. And we don't realize how we became debtors, and these agreements that we do in the freedom documents help to establish your proper status under the Bill of Rights and the Constitution that establish you. Now, the Constitution did not give you any rights. The Bill of Rights did not give you any rights. It just outlined the God-given, unalienable rights that were given to you as a birthright for being born on this nation, in this nation. Now, those rights can't be taken away from you because they were not given to you by a government or a corporation. They were given to you by God. That's your birthright. So, we give these rights away well, not necessarily voluntarily, but we do volunteer to give them away, sometimes unknowingly, through the contracts that we enter into and the agreements we enter into. And the freedom documents set the stage so that you'll be in a position and have status to abide by those. Okay, we'll get that squared away. All right. Pardon forgiveness for the interruption there. We'll get that straightened up. Yeah, okay, that may help some of y'all get me away from behind the speaker a little more. Yeah. Testing. Yeah, that's better. That's right. Thank you, Randy. In section 2 of your book, you'll find what we call our financial documents. The financial documents help establish the account and notify the Treasury with a set of instructions on what we intend to do. It also helps charge the account and lets them know we want to use this account for discharge of debt. Section 3 is our bonds and notes. We have the birth certificate bond, the indemnity bond, the offset discharge bond, and we have the bonded promissory note. Those are the instruments that we use. And those are the things that we're going to teach you about today. Now in Section 4 there are a number of things there that we'll talk about primarily tomorrow, which is mostly enforcement. There's also some good things in there for you to read. We have the Judge's Bench book for any of you guys that may be wanting to go to court. I will say the best way to win in court is stay out of court if you can, but if you have to go to court, be prepared. You can have a lot of fun in court. I love to say something to a lawyer and all of a sudden I get that blank stare, the deer in the headlight look. Has no idea what you're talking about. I know that's when I've got him. Well, the bottom line is that there's a lot of information in there that can help you, and we'll go through all of these things with you. Now, tomorrow you're going to really enjoy tomorrow. Tomorrow's Hammer Day. On Hammer Day, we're going to show you how to apply our negative averment and win. I'm going to show you the same process I used against the court down in Alabama and some other courts, and we have some of those folks here actually that have used this process, and they've got some of these courts in a mess right now, and they're almost, some of them are ready to start this collection process, and some of them are here to bone up on the last little details that they need to start that. And we're going to share that with you tomorrow. This is a powerful process, and it's complete from A to Z. Is it perfect? No. We're always making it better. Always making it better because we find new and more information that makes it more powerful. And it's a living set of documents, and it will probably never be completed. Because the more I find it helps strengthen what we're doing, I'm going to add it. So be aware of that. But these are very good documents. They're very powerful documents, and they do a good job of establishing. I've had 3 judges, just by opening up our Freedom Document package and reading some of the stuff in there, get up and walk off of the bench and not come back to court. Just by looking at it. Just reading a few pages and got up, closed the file, left the court, did not return. That's a powerful statement for a judge to do that. I tried to give some documents to the federal judge down in Alabama, and he got up and literally ran out the back door. Some of these guys in here were with me. He bolted right out the back door. I tried to give him some documents. He wouldn't take them. That old fat boy could move. He surprised me. He could get down the road. But I love it when I walk into court. But I have some documents for you here, and the U.S. Marshal that was acting as bailiff there, he said, "I can't take any documents from you." The judge told me no, can't take any documents. I said, "But yeah, I just want to give him this right." But Judge, you need to see this. You need to read this. I'd already filed it in the case, so it didn't really matter. I was just intimidating him a little bit. Having some fun. And I enjoy going into court sometimes, probably a little too much. It probably borders on a sin as much as I like to be going to aggravate people. But it is a lot of fun to play with these folks that think they're so high and mighty, and then all of a sudden you jerk the rug out from under them, and they don't realize it until it's too late. And then they know they're in trouble. And then they know that I know how to make them pay. And that's where they get worried. Because if you ever take a judge's bond or a clerk's bond or a lawyer's bond, he's done. He's out of gas. His career's over. He can't be bonded again. He can't participate in commerce. Pretty serious offense. Dishonoring commerce is something that you need to learn, and it's really easy to do. These people are so arrogant and have stepped on the law for so long, they do it on a daily basis, and it's just the normal course of business. And all you got to do is just let them go right into the little trap that you set for them. And remember, they're like chickens. As long as you drop breadcrumbs, they concentrate on the breadcrumbs and not on their surroundings, and then they'll keep going until they run out of breadcrumbs, and then they look around and realize they're in a cage. And they can't get out of the cage without your help. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do tomorrow. Our first form that we use is the UCC1. Doc, can you ask Billy Ray if he's got a board? If they've got a board I can get? Might want to write some notes today. Now the UCC1, there's a lot of misconceptions about the UCC1. There are a lot of people teach that the UCC1 is a lien. UCC1 is a notice of lien. It is not a lien in itself. However, it does notice there could be a lien. But there has to be a lien established that backs that. And we're going to show you about that as well. Now, it is a great document. It is a great document. And it's one of the documents that we use to do a legal separation between the real man and the straw man. Now, and there are all kind of theories about how to do this, and a lot of people teach a lot of different things, and I don't want to discuss what everybody else does. I'm going to tell you the way I do it. I want to keep the straw man alive and well in commerce. I didn't create him, so I can't kill him anyway. I want him to be alive and healthy in commerce, and I want to use him because he is the conduit, the vehicle that I was given to use in commerce properly. How many of you can go out here and get a job, open a bank account, invest money, or do... You can't hardly do anything out here without... You can't get a credit card. You can't buy a car. You can't do anything. You can't hardly get anything in this society without that little Social Security number. Now, you can live as a hermit out in the woods if you want to and not participate in commerce. And some people like that for about 3 days. And then it kind of gets a little bit boring out there by yourself because not too many people out there that are not in commerce. So if we want to participate in commerce, we need to learn how to do it properly. And the way to do it properly is use the vehicle that was given to us to use. But, however, we need to understand that that is not us. How many of you here have a corporation, LLC, or any kind of corporation? Are you the corporation? No, you're not the corporation. You're either the managing director, trustee, whatever an executive of the corporation, whatever capacity you have. But you are not the corporation itself. It's the same way between the relationship between you and the straw man party. You are not the straw man. You are not the all capital letter name. However, he is a corporation created on your behalf and for your benefit. Now, it hasn't always been used that way, but that is the proper way for it to be. So, whenever we do the separation, we need to make a complete and total separation between you and that party. Now, the straw man is always represented in all capital names. All capital name, and the real man is always in upper lowercase. You need to learn to write it that way. Now, another thing that I do when I'm talking about my real, natural man, I put my full legal name on any legal documents that I do. I don't abbreviate. I put the full legal name. I don't use initials. I don't use You get full legal name, and that's a practice that I think you should keep. On the straw man, if you want to abbreviate, do whatever you like. It's not important, because you can't abbreviate because he is a fictitious entity. He is a non-living entity. Now, let me get my pointer out here. There are certain rules with names. If you'll look in the back, I think it's the next to the last page in your book. Should be. Okay, the one with the names right here. This page right here. It says straw man, real man, terminology. You'll see some terms. Everybody got that page? Okay. You'll see some terms that refer to the real man, straw man. In the straw man, you'll see the all capital letter name, and I better get back in my box here. Get back in my box. You'll see he is, thank you, Wilson. The straw man is a all capital letter name, an organization, a debtor, a bailee, a trust, a grantor, a conduit, transmitting utility. And his name is represented by the all-case name and all capital letter address. Now, the city, state, and zip code is part of that address. Now, you can abbreviate on the straw man if you like, but don't abbreviate on the real man. Now, the real man is the upper lowercase name, and you can use the hyphen and colon if you like, or not. That's entirely up to you. And I'll show you when we define our names why we can do that. But he's also an individual, secured party creditor, bailer, trustee, and grantee. And he's represented by the upper lowercase name and upper lowercase address, and the city, state is spelled out completely, and it says near the zip code. And I want you to write in underneath that non-domestic without the United States or without the U.S. Non-domestic without the U.S. That is the way that we do our real man address. Denise, you want to go through with me and do that while we're going through this, so we can probably cover most of this while we're going through the class. Some changes we're supposed to be in the book. Okay. Now, it's just non-domestic. However you want to write it, it's fine. Doesn't matter. Non-domestic without the U.S. Okay. Now, when you look at the UCC1 form, it's a legal. We use this for a legal separation to show that we are not the same. We also include protection of our property on this form. And we're going to talk about it. Now, this is a state of Florida form. Use this as an example. Most of your forms are real similar. They might be a little different. And there may be some little quirks in your state that they require to file these. And you'll just have to ask, because there's 48 or 50 states out here, and I don't have all of the details. I've run into all kind of crazy problems across the country where you can't do this and you can't do that. Ask the people where you file your UCC. Now, one of the best places to file is Washington State. They do a national filing, and they're easy to deal with usually. They don't have a whole lot of quirks with that place, and so if you want to do a national filing, that's fine. It's not a bad idea. Okay. Up here in box A, that's just contact address or name and a phone number rather. That's contact name and phone number. Now down here is the address in box B. Now we started putting the straw man's name here because we were sending these in the mail and they were mailing them back with the straw man's name and the real man's address. So we just started putting in the straw man's name and address. Now when we talk about straw man's name and address, his address does not need to be the same as the real man. You need to do a separation. Now the straw man can have a mailbox. He can have street address, have what he wants. The real man needs to have a different one. And he does not need to have a United States Post Office mailbox because that is considered in the federal zone. What we do is we either get a private mailbox, or you can use the street address and just put care of and non-domestic, as we showed you on the real man's address. Non-domestic without the United States. That's one of the ways we do that. You can also use it without a zip code if you like. A zip code is not required, however, it might slow your mail down. But if you're talking about the real man, it's probably not really all that important because most of your mail comes to your all-capital letter name anyway. Very little of your mail comes to the real man. Mostly it's personal correspondence between you and other parties, and very little of it that is sent by agencies ever comes to anything but the straw man. If you'll go home and look at your mail tonight, you'll see what I'm talking about. Almost all of it comes with all capital letter name because he is your vessel in commerce. Everything out here just about works in commerce. So when you get a letter from a bill collector or a letter from the court or one of these agencies and a present from somebody out here that's trying to get you to pay something, that we call that a present because sometimes it can be. We want you to pay attention that you'll find out it's almost always in the uppercase name. There are exceptions, but usually it is. So when you change your address, take that into consideration. You might want to keep the straw man in the same address that he already is so you don't have to go out and do a bunch of change of address forms. Okay, but make sure the real man make sure that the real man we're going to have to move. Let's back this speaker up just a little bit. Sorry for the... Thank you, sir. Okay, I think that'll work. Yes, sir, that'll work. Man, you all right? I don't care what anybody says. That's going to be a problem? Okay. All right. Now, make sure that you keep a legal separation between the two parties, as we've just talked about. If you need to get a post office box for the real man, I highly recommend you go down and get it at a private postal facility that rents post office boxes and use the care of and non-domestic on your address. And that's the way most of us do it. Now, the post office is in the federal zone, and they can be considered in the federal zone too unless you list it that way with the care of and the non-domestic, the zip code, near the zip code in the box. And that's the way we do it. Okay. So box B is the straw man's name and address. If you're going to mail these in, they're going to mail them back to the straw man. Now, they do that almost every single time, everywhere we've been. And so you make sure you put his name and address in because you don't want your upper lowercase name and the straw man's address together. You want them separated. We're trying to do a separation here. Now, box number 1 is simply debtor's information. Oops. Okay, box number 1 is debtor's information. Everything in here goes to the debtor. Now, who is the debtor? Straw man. All capital letter name is the debtor. All the information in there belongs to the straw man. You can't mix it. Now, the straw man is an organization. If you'll look on your list of names and titles that we have back there that we were just looking at, you'll find that he is an organization. He is not an individual for the purposes of this form. Now, I know that an individual is a lot of time is referred to as a corporation. We don't have a choice of any other designation on this form. So we have to use the individual and the organization because that's all we have. Now, the organization name is the all capital letter name. Mailing address is whatever you say it is. City, state, postal code. Country is the United States. Leave him in the United States. That's where he belongs. He is a legal entity. And organizational ID, ask your office where you file these what to put there. Some allow you to check it some don't. In some places they require you to check it. In some places they won't file it if you do, so you'll just have to ask. But do not put Social Security numbers in this document because they won't file it, or EIN numbers. They won't file it that way in most places today because of the identity theft laws that have been passed in the last year or so. That's a problem that we had. But whatever they tell you you need to do in that county. But don't mix up the upper or lowercase names and addresses. Now, some states won't file these at all. Alabama just won't do it. They call them straw man filings. But a lot of states will, so you'll have to find one. Like I say, Washington State will. Randy, what do they file them here in Texas?
If you kick them hard enough.
If you kick them hard?
Some counties will, some counties won't.
You just have to work through that and find out. Now, Denise, you've done some of these already?
No problem whatsoever filing to Washington State.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it, actually. In my opinion, Washington State, as long as you pay the filing fee, they don't care. They don't seem to care a whole lot. They do have some little quirks, and you'll have to, Denise can probably help you with that. Okay, now, number 2, additional debtors. I don't generally use that. If you have a cause to use that, you may. I don't have any reasons for purposes of this paperwork to use it, so I just leave it blank. Now, in number 3, the secured party's name is the upper lowercase name, and he is listed under 3B as an individual. And you put his first, middle. If you have a suffix, what if you're a junior? Do you put JR period? No. You spell out junior. I don't do abbreviations are associated with corporations. Okay? And just put the name and address. Now, when you get down here where it says city, and you just have to see in your form. Now, can Washington State form, can you spell the city out, the city and the state out completely on their form?
They converted to mixed-case town, so you can't control the case, but you can spell it out.
Okay. Well, what we do is we put, if we have to do it, like in Florida, the only thing you can do is put FL usually. In I think it was in Florida. There's several states that do that. And they'll only let you put FL in here under the state. So what we've done in some of the states that do that is we come over here and we write the city, comma, and the state and spell it out and just leave that blank.
You go back to Florida.
Okay, you can? Okay. Back when we used to file them, we wouldn't let you do it. But they've changed up a lot of things. We fought with Florida for a lot of years and tried to get them to do things. They were a little bit difficult. I could even go down to I have literally went to the office in Florida, and they'd reject my paperwork. I would take it back down there with a new form, and I would say, show me exactly what you want. I would have the clerk fill out the form the way they want it, write it in. I would go fill it out just exactly that way on a new form and send it back in, and they reject it. We fought with them for 2 years back and forth trying to figure out what they wanted because they didn't seem to know. And finally, I just went down there and told them, so you guys are going to have to start filing these or we're going to deal with you. And they backed off. But it got pretty hairy there for a while. These folks are sometimes a little bit difficult. They forget who they are. Okay, Section 4 is in Florida form. Now, in Florida, when I was doing them, it's been quite some time. It's been several years since I filed in Florida. And I understand they have done a lot of changes. But in Box 4, they wouldn't let us put our property or list our property. If you put anything very much in that box, they'd reject it every time. So we got this statement in here that we started putting in here. All property belonging to the debtor belongs to the secured party. Debtor is a transmitting utility and debtor is a trust. Well, we started doing that and they started accepting them, so we did that. Now I understand they'll even accept a property list in Florida, but I haven't tried that, but I've been told they will.
I submitted my UCC one with my property list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but boy, used to, they wouldn't do that. They would not do it. So what we did is we would do this and file the form, the UCC one, and then you would come back with an amendment and attach your property list to that, and they'd file it. But they wouldn't do it on the one. Go figure. It's just what I'm trying to explain to you is in your state they have these little quirks, and it's usually the personalities of the people down there at the office. Yes?
Having had, just like you said, if I can offer you a suggestion, if you file in the national site, or the national state is Washington, okay? If you will do an online filing, it will cost you $11 doing an online filing. The difficulty with attaching your property list, just like Tim said, is it wants to reformat your property list, their online system, and it totally hoses it all up, okay? Removes the numbering system in the area that they give you, plus it's a 25,000 character limit. So what you do, just like Tim said, you file the UCC 1 for $11, and you turn around and you mail in. You're not waiting on anything because you're making an addendum to it, so you're not in a wait state. You've already got the UCC number. You turn around and you mail in the UCC 3. That's the amendment, and physically attach the property list, and it'll take them about a week to process it.
That's the way we used to have to do it in Florida as well. And if that's the rules, just abide by what they tell you got to do, just to work with them. I will tell you something about dealing with these agencies out here. Don't go in there with an attitude. Go in there and be nice to people if you can. Now, sometimes there's times for attitude. I've had to have a few times. I've had an attitude. They've called security on me a few times. Every time I go down in Franklin County, Florida, even today, I guarantee if I walked in there tomorrow, they'd call security on me and kind of walk in the courthouse. But I can go in the clerk's office and I'll get a hug before I get out of the clerk's office. The judge's chamber, they'll call 6 deputies if I walk down there. That's the difference in the attitudes. But I'm such a nice guy, I don't understand it. But I have read the riot act of a few of those judges. But anyway, the bottom line is you go down there with an attitude to try to make peace. Don't go in there. I've got a guy who used to be in my group down in Florida. He couldn't get anything filed. Every time he'd take something down to the courthouse, he goes, they wouldn't file it for me. So, I mean, I don't have any trouble filing down there. What's the deal? I don't know. Well, so I went down there with him. He walks in there, and he's a big old boy, big old potato-fed boy. And he's scruffy looking, and he don't take a bath often enough, and you're one of these kind of folks. I mean, when you're dealing with professional people, you need to be professional. But he walked down there, and I went with him. He walks down and he throws it on the counter and said, file this or I'm going to sue you. Well, that's the way you make friends and influence people. So I took him back to my office and I talked to him. I said, Ricky, why don't you just go down there and be nice? Well, I was nice. We need to work on his social skills a little bit. But anyway, and I could go down there the same day with the same paperwork and they'd file it for me. Wouldn't be any problem whatsoever. But and like I say, I'd get a hug before I got out of the clerk's office because I've dealt with them for years and they understand. Build relationships with these people. You know, we're not down there to be adversaries. We want to be friends. We just want them to understand we're just asking for what we're supposed to have. We're not asking for anything extra. We're not asking for anything illegal. We're not asking for anything that's immoral or anything that's wrong. We're just trying to do what the law says we can do. And if the law is wrong, somebody needs to change the law. That's all we're asking for. You want to check the Bailey-Baylor relationship here. And in Florida, you have to check documentary stamp is not required. Or they won't file it just because of that. They're little quirks. But that's just in Florida. If you have those things, like I say, you've got to check your state. Now, the second page is just kind of a recap of what we've already done. But at the bottom of the second page, and in a lot of states they do have this second page, you'll find that it'll ask for a couple of things. And you check debtor is a trust and debtor is a transmitting utility. Now, and I've been told all kind of different things, and I don't know in your state what they do. Some states refile these in 5 years, some are 30 years, and some say they're a lifetime. I'd be suspect of that, and it has to do with checking the transmitting utility, I understand.
Matches the book.
That matches the book. You're all right. I don't care what nobody says. Okay, so check those two, debtors of trust and debtors of transmitting utility. Are there any questions on this form? Okay, if you will come up to the mic, or you can write your questions down if you have some, and pass them to over here, and Denise will read them for you. Yes, sir.
Yes, in Oklahoma, they won't let you check the utility.
No. There he is.
Now?
Sounds like so, yeah.
Okay. In Oklahoma, you go in and try to file a UCC1, they will not let you click utility. It says, you're not a utility company. And then we try and explain to them, nope, won't accept it.
Yeah, well, then I would file in another state.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd file where they would let me check it, because it's important that you do that. They don't understand that the debtor is a utility. Just leave that mic on. We'll change the battery. It's too much trouble.
If we've already filed the documents, the UCC documents, or actually all of our freedom documents, and we didn't separate the addresses, do I need to refile that?
I'd do an amendment, yes.
An amendment to the UCC? Okay.
Right. I'd do a UCC amendment. You need to separate those addresses. It's important.
In box 3 for the secured party name, if you are the fourth, do you spell that out, or do you
Yes.
Okay.
I do not abbreviate on the real man's name. Now, on the straw man name, you can do that, but not on the real man's name. Okay, Denise?
On the UCC3, Tim, where it says add or correct documents already filed, it's a question. On the UCC3, do you add or correct documents already filed?
You can, yes, you can do the one amendment, or I think the 3 is an addendum. Isn't that right, Randy?
3 is amendment.
3 is an amendment and 1 is an addendum. Then I get them confused. Okay, 1 is the addendum and 3 is an amendment. You can use the 3 to correct any problems that you want. Yes.
There's also on the 3, it gives you a box to add, change, or delete.
Yes.
So you let it know whether you're adding something to it, changing something, or deleting something.
It tells you add, change, delete, or terminate. I will say this. If you have liens in place that are recorded on the UCC1, and you're trying to protect your property from somebody, and you're first in line, first in time, true holder in due course on that lien, don't terminate it. Just amend it. I had a lady did that last year, and I told her not to, but she didn't listen. And before she got it refiled, IRS placed a lien on her property. She lost her first in time status.
Okay, the second question, Tim, is it necessary to refile for these changes? I think that's...
It depends how many changes, I guess. You'll have to make the judgment on that. If you're not under threat of a lien from some kind of agency, probably I would terminate and refile. But other than that, you can just amend it.
I recently changed my Social Security card. I changed the name on the card. Should I use the additional debtor's box for the new debtor?
No. They changed their name.
On the Social Security
Social
card.
Security.
Mm-hmm.
I would just refile that. I just terminate the old agreement and refile a new one unless you're under a threat of a lien or a judgment or something. Okay.
Mm-hmm. The question is if you're married, can you use the same P.O. box even though you're two separate entities in the corporation?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, you can. But you just need the debtor and the real man, the straw man and the real man need to have separate addresses. We're doing a separation, and that's one way to keep that separation. Okay. The Attachment A property list is something we've added to our program, and it lays out what your property is. It's a pretty comprehensive list, I think, of 107 items. We've put everything in there, including the kitchen sink. So we put everything we could think of. If there is additional property, if there is additional property that you want to add to this list, that's fine. And this is a list. It's page 7. Okay. And it's called Attachment A Property List. Now you can add this to the UCC filing if you wish and list all your property. So we do this to protect your property. Now we use this list in 4 places. It's overkill. We're trying to work around our documents and reformat it to take care of that. But we put this Attachment A property list in 4 different places. And we'll talk about those. On the UCC 1, we do it on the commercial security agreement, the actual and constructive notice, and the legal notice and demand. And we're trying to reformat our documents where we can get it down to 1 property list, but we want all of the property that is referenced in all of those documents at this point to make sure there's no misunderstanding what we're talking about. And yeah, it's overkill. We know that. And we're working on trying to correct that. But right now, with the way the documents are formatted, I would use all 4 property lists to protect your property because it's very important to do that. Now, I will say this. IRS has tried to break our lien on a commercial security agreement, and they couldn't do it. They've tried. I've had some people that have tried to break the liens that we put on their houses so they could sell their homes. And one guy in Iowa, they did sell his home. He calls me up and he said, well, the IRS is going to sell my house. He said, but they sent me a letter. Now, I've been trying to get him for 7 or 8 months, almost a year probably, to get his paperwork in. He didn't do it, but his wife did. He drug around, didn't do it. But when she filed the lien in the commercial security agreement, we'll show you, she didn't like the $100 billion lien, so she changed it to $150,000. She thought $100 billion was too much. Well, that's the whole point. It's having a lien that's overkill. So you're upside down and there's no value. But anyway, the property was worth probably $300,000 or so. So they had equity, so they sold the house. But they sent them a letter. They said, we're going to have to give you the $150,000. So what he did, this was a bunch of Mennonite folks, good folks. And they all got together, went down to the sale, and they lowballed the sale. And so he came out all right because they had to give him $150,000 and the place sold for less than that, so he actually made money on the deal, so it came out all right. His brother bought the house and he paid his brother back when he got the check from IRS. So IRS still lost money on the deal. But anyway, they still came out all right. So I told him, I said, well, do you think that the lien is too much now? I said, if you'd have had the $100 billion lien on it, you wouldn't have had to go through all the trouble of selling your house and then buying it back. There wouldn't be no value, and that's the whole point. Everything I have has $100 billion in silver lien against it. If you want my property, I'll sell it to you. I'll even give you a discount. Come and get it. That's why the attorney, when he stood in court the other day, or a few weeks ago, and the judge said, I'm going to sanction you for $25,000. The attorney looked at him and said, but Judge, it won't do any good. You can't make him pay anything. He already knows about the lien. He's done his homework. And they won't be able to break that lien. It's been tried by several attorneys and the IRS several times, and they've not been able to break this little simple lien. And so be aware that that's what you want to be toxic to these people. That's our whole point, is to make you toxic, where there's no benefit in dealing with you, because all they want is revenue, all they want is resources, all they want is they want equity, they want the value of what you have, and if there is none, then you're toxic. They'll go catch an easier fish.
Sorry to break the rules, but I just wanted to
If you will, go to the mic, if you could.
You mentioned before, Tim, that UCC1 is a notice of lien.
It is.
But you are, when you're talking now, you're saying that it is a lien,
No.
not a notice of lien.
I said the
So
commercial
when does that
security
become?
agreement was linked.
Oh, the social,
Yes,
the
commercial
security agreement. The
right.
security agreement. Okay.
That's what I said. The commercial security agreement puts the lien. Said I'd show you that in a few minutes.
Okay. Excellent. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, this is only a notice of lien. Now, property is very important. Property is what you say property is. I want you to start thinking like a secured party creditor. You're not a debtor. Well, you may be now, but you won't be for long. But I want you to start thinking like a secured party. If I say I own it, prove me wrong. How are you going to do that? So if you want to put something on this property list that belongs to you, make sure that it's yours first of all. If you have property in a trust and you're not the trustee of the trust, you don't own the property. Somebody else does, so you can't put it on there. If you have hidden caches of weapons and illegal stuff out there, don't put your private stash on there, because you're going to put this into the public. There are a lot of people out teaching that these security agreements and all the property lists don't have to be filed in public. Well, I wouldn't want to have to go to court and defend that. And there may be ways to do it, but I would say this, that I don't believe you'd want to face me in court with a hidden security agreement or a hidden property list that's not in the public, because you can't prove when you filed it. And if you're going to be first in line, first in time, true holder in due course, which is the position, first lien holder position, this stuff has to be made public some way. Because you can't prove it unless it is. But if I've got a file stamped, date and time stamped copy of a document that I filed in a county court or some other source, I can prove when I put it into the public. And I'll beat you over the head with it all day long in court. And the whole point about all of this stuff is I like to win. And a lot of people say, a lot of the stuff we do is unnecessary. It might be, but I win. I can document everything I do in a number of ways, and I always win. And if you want to win, you're going to have to learn documentation is how you win in court. Without it, you will not lose. What you say in court, or what you say when you go before these agencies and these hearings, will evaporate. And it certainly won't be recorded the way you say it in most cases. Court records do get changed, by the way. I've had court records completely disappear. They don't like anything in the public record that puts them on the hot seat. They don't like it. And I've had records completely disappear from the court. I've had filings. We had some maritime liens disappear just recently from a court. But we've got date and time-stamped copies of those liens. And now we've got criminal charges against the clerk. Because we can prove they were in the record, but they're not in the record anymore. Isn't that just something? A record search says they're not there. Somebody's in some trouble, don't you think? But documentation is everything. If you don't have documentation, you will not win. I can't overemphasize that. Yeah, some of the stuff we do is overkill. I'll be the first to admit it. But when I walk into court, I'm going to be able to bombard them with my documents to prove my case. Okay, the property list is very important. If you have a pet bulldog you want to put on there that you think a lot of, put him on there. I don't care what you put on there. Whatever you say is your property, but be aware that everybody in the public will be able to see what your property is. Sometimes that's a two-edged sword. So be aware. Now don't put your private stash of gold and buried treasure in your backyard on there unless you're going to give me a copy of the GPS coordinates so I know where to go get it. So don't do that. Because if you put it on there, somebody's going to know you got it. So be aware of what you put on your property list. But anything that you want to protect, you probably need to. Okay. Now, you'll see on there, there's a lot of things on property that we do that's kind of unusual and unique, and I have a reason for doing everything I do. I put children's and grandchildren on the property list. Can you own your kids and grandkids? Who has more right to own them than you do? A lot of people say, we can't own them. If they're minor children and grandchildren, who has more right than you do? And if you go back in the Scripture, you'll find out that a lot of the patriarchs claim their grandkids as theirs. Who has more right? Prove me wrong.
Did you put your wife on there?
I didn't put my wife on there, no. But yes, sir. Very. I might be from Alabama, but I'm not that slow. No, I did not put my wife on mine. She is not involved in this process, and she doesn't understand it well enough, and I don't think I'll live long enough to teach it to her. But she is coming along. She did go to one of my meetings once, and she loved it. She didn't understand it, but she loved it. So, and she really is not. She doesn't oppose me on it. She goes right along with me and whatever I want to do. But she doesn't understand it well enough, and maybe one day. Sometimes, what did Christ say? Those of your own family are the hardest to reach sometimes. But anyway, if you want to put it on there, and I do, I put the children and grandchildren. Make them argue with me. And I'm talking about underage children. I'm not talking about children that are of legal age, because they got to be on their own. So if you have some that fall into the category, by all means. Now, what if you have someone that you're a caretaker of that may be mentally impaired or handicapped, that you are responsible to take care of? By all means. Now, we had a guy down in Alabama that did this process and put his minor kids on his property list. And he got a letter from the school one day, said that they were going to vaccinate his kids on such a certain day. And he went down there the next day with that notice and said, I don't want you to vaccinate my kids. And the principal informed him and said, well, we don't need your permission. We were just notifying you that we were going to do it. And he said, well, I don't think you want to do that. So he took a copy of his freedom documents along with his property list and all down to the county attorney for the school that day. And the next afternoon when he got in from work, he had got a call from the principal. And the principal told him, said, sir, we will not vaccinate your kids under any circumstances without your written permission. Well, what was the difference between his kids and everybody else's kids? He put them on his UCC-1 and property list. Now, whether he truly owns them or not, I can't say, but he protected them by doing that. And so it might be something to think about. Pay attention to the format here. Now, choose one, man or woman, whichever one you are. If you're not sure, just look down when you get out of the shower and it'll solve that dilemma. That's a story in itself. That was on a radio show, and my co-host is Bill Witwicky, is a retired Army colonel, and big old gruff guy. He gets a little insensitive sometimes. Let's just put it that way. And he gets rough on some of these issues, and some of the issues I try to stay away from because I don't like to offend people. But he did. He said some stuff and offended a guy who was homosexual. He calls in on the program, and I try to smooth it up because I'm not an offensive person as a rule. I try to get along with everybody. But the bottom line is this guy just kept threatening and accusing, and he got really nasty with me. I didn't even say anything. And so I tried to make it, tell him, well, we didn't intend to insult you and all this kind of stuff. But he just kept right on and kept right on, and he kept telling me he was born that way and all this kind of stuff, which I don't know about all that. But anyway, he kept on until he aggravated me. I mean, this guy kept on for 10 minutes, and I don't like to cut people off my show. I let them talk because I believe in free speech, even if you don't agree with what I say. I like to let people vent their whatever they want to do, vent their spleen, as they say. But the bottom line is he just kept on being obnoxious and got worse and worse. And finally I said, listen, buddy, if you don't know what you are, when you get out of the shower in the morning, just look down. And boy, he got mad and hung up on me. I just got enough of him. Okay. Now the next document we do is a power of attorney. Here. Okay, the power of attorney is just a very simple power of attorney. We also use that as a document that helps separate the two entities, which should be following right along in your book with this. Should be in order. I hope it's in order. It's out of order? Oh, my God. Okay, I apologize. Billy Ray! Bless his heart. I don't make it easy on him, I tell you. But the power of attorney is simply that. This power of attorney gives the real man permission to do business for the straw man. Now, I usually get the question, how can a fictitious entity give you permission to do anything? I would love for a judge to give me a letter stating that the straw man does not exist. What do you think I'd do with that? I'd bring their whole house of cards down. Because everything they're doing is charging the straw man. If he doesn't exist, see ya. I'd love to have that letter. So, whenever we do this power of attorney, we keep the separation, and it's a very simple document. I'm not going to read it to you. You can read it. You're adults for the most part. And you can read this document and understand it's a very simple document. Pay attention to the highlights and put in there what it says. It says John Lee Doe in all capital letters. What do you think you should put there? That's it. Straw man name goes there. Please don't call me up and say, where it says county, your county, what should I put there? I have that happen. Really. I really have people do that. I'm serious. I'm not joking about it. Makes me worry about some folks. Okay? And just pay attention to the highlights here. When you get your disc, it'll be highlighted differently. And this has to be notarized. Make sure you put, if you go out of county or out of state and have this notarized, make sure you put the right state and county in here. I've had people go in there and put their county and state in there and then go to another county and try to get it notarized. It doesn't work out real good, so make sure you pay attention to that. Yes, sir.
It's on.
Okay. Then, just a point that I've been using. I do these things all the time for the straw man.
Right.
I use the address on your birth certificate. They can't argue with that. And how can a straw man move?
Well, you can do that. We used to use the birth hospital, but a lot of them don't exist anymore. That's why we quit doing that.
Well, most of them I've seen, it has an address of some place that you lived, or your physical address when the straw man came into the world. And that's the physical announcement and creation of the corporation or trust or whatever it is that they use.
And you can do that if you like. That's fine.
And that way it simplifies.
The only problem is, though, is if you go down there and you do that and they start sending mail to your straw man at that address, what you going to do?
Go back to them.
And this is the notary part of the power of attorney. Okay, and our next, very simple form. Our next document is the personal security agreement, and we're going to take a break for about 10 minutes. And before we go into that, so let's take a break for about 10 minutes. Our next document is a commercial security agreement. Very powerful document. Now, at the top of this, right up under the heading, you will notice that there's a number goes here. Put any number in there that you want to do. We made a suggestion, and this is what we've done in the past, is put your initials and birth month without any dashes or slashes or any of this kind of stuff. Let Billy Ray get finished with his business at hand. Yes, Randy. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. It is registered in international commerce. Yeah, well, we use them all the time. Use them all the time.
There were a couple of questions on the property
Okay,
list,
go ahead.
Tim, and on the notary. So let me
Okay.
get those on record. Some of the property lists have different headings at the top. Should they all be the same? So
Yes.
that there you go. When you refer to attachment A, attachment A should be the same as it's used in the commercial security agreement, legal notice and demand.
Donna's going to go over that with y'all a little bit tomorrow to clarify a couple of little things for you. Tomorrow afternoon. Yeah.
If
Okay. Okay. All right.
If you're married, if the married name is on a Social Security card, but maiden name is on a birth certificate, what is the straw man name and what is the real man name?
What do you want it to be? They kind of need to match up. Now, what we do, and I'll show you in our next set of documents, is called the Actual and Constructed Notice Package. We have an agreement in there that identifies who the names are, so that you can use either one you want, but you need to list those names because we define who they are. And you can put both of those names on there, and you can use the one that you want to use.
The property list has Social Security numbers, which you can't record at the county because of the Privacy Act. How do you record a property list with a Social Security number?
I X out the last four numbers. I just put XXXX.
Great point.
That's the way we do.
That's right. That's exactly what we do when we file them. If you'll send them to us with the X's already in
And
it.
that
So.
redacts the last four numbers, and they don't have to worry about identity theft. Okay? Well, thank you.
I forgot the last question. It's right here on my thing. Can you list your checking account numbers on your property list so it carries a $100 billion lien against it and can't be frozen by the IRS?
No, do not put your numbers on there. List it all checking accounts, foreign, all bank accounts, foreign and domestic. That's the way I list. I don't list individual numbers. I don't want people to know where my checking accounts are. But I just put all bank accounts, foreign and domestic, and then that covers it. All means all. Well, they might try, but it could be some liability incurred.
If you look on his property list, number 57, he's already taken that into
Yeah,
consideration.
we've covered the bases pretty well. Yeah, I can't say they won't do it. I can say that they'll incur some liability if they do. And that's all what it's about. When you can enforce the liability, that's where you have power to deal with these folks. Okay, the commercial security agreement, as I said, just make up a number. This is a tracking number. Okay, the SAO1 just means security agreement number 1, but make up any number you want. Put in there. That's just an example, but it's your number, make it up. And it's used for tracking purposes. Now, the reason we put numbers on some of our documents because they're important documents, and we put numbers on them so we can put them on our notary presentment forms and identify that specific document. It's important. Some documents we need to be absolutely sure we can identify what they are because they're important documents. This is one of those. This also keeps a separation of the two parties, as you can see. It defines who the debtor and secured party is. And there is an agreement. And you can see how we do the Social Security numbers. Here's an example of what we're talking about. The social and the last four numbers are just X'd out. It's a very simple agreement. But it's a pretty decent agreement. Choose his or her, whichever you want, or this is for your birth year. Okay, and it gives the terms and conditions of what the straw man and real man's working relationship are. And it defines a lot of different things. It's a pretty good agreement, and you'll find that if you get a chance, just go read through it, because I'm not going to read it to you. We don't have that time for that. But you can find that it takes into consideration a lot of different things. Okay, when you get to the signature line on this, how do you sign for the debtor? Straw man. How does straw man sign his name? He prints in all capital letters. Unless you can sign in all capital letters. I've not met anybody that could yet. I had a guy told me he could, but he never showed me. But not seen anybody be able to sign in all caps yet. If you can do that, by all means. But other than that, we print in all capital letters. Now, on the real man, we sign full legal name. I do it in blue ink. I use blue ink because it denotes an original signature, what is known as a wet ink signature. And that's what I do. I do both sides in blue ink. Okay? And that's, like I say, is a very simple document, but it does a lot for you. Now, we also, like I said before, we include a property list here. They're already incorporated, by the way, into your documents. You don't have to change it. It also has an indemnity bond to indemnify the real man for anything that the straw man might do. Got a guy over in Knoxville, he sent a letter to the state. He said, I want to apologize for the actions of my straw man. Obviously, he's been acting up behind my back. I think he was an example of one that got dropped on his head one time too many. He was. He said, what you think about that? I said, they ought to enjoy that, all right. Okay. Now, we place a lien. This is noticing them that we're placing a lien on all of our property. And the lien here, it says, this agreement constitutes an international commercial lien on all property of the debtor indemnitor on behalf of and for the benefit of the secured party creditor indemnity in the amount of 100 billion United States silver dollars of 0.995 silver. This lien will expire at the moment that the indemnity expires or when this lien is satisfied by the indemnity. If you want to modify that sum, now I have people ask me, well, what if we don't want it to expire when we expire and we want to leave things to our kid? I tell them, kids, I said, well, that's what a will does. So if you want to reword that and make it fit your circumstance, by all means do. But if you're going to leave property, you don't do it with a notice of lien, you do it with a will. And that's my suggestion, but everybody's got their own. But you still sign this the same way. Sign in blue ink, all capital letter for the straw man, and full legal signature on the right for the real man. Okay, are there any questions on the security agreement? That little simple agreement has held lawyers and even the IRS at bay on attaching liens on people's property. That one little simple agreement. Yes.
Sorry. Are you able to modify that number, that lien, say for, I guess if you just wanted to do it, would you be able to put the amount of the bailout, the recent bailout? Maybe like the trillion?
It's your agreement. You can do anything you want.
I just wanted to make sure.
You can do anything. Remember, these are your documents. Make them yours. Do whatever you like, but make sure you understand the changes that you make before you make them, because there's been a lot of thought put into these things, and they're not perfect, I'll admit that, but they're probably pretty good. we've sure fought a lot of battles and won with these documents. So be aware of that. Now, we had a guy down in South Florida. He was an elderly fellow, and some of y'all know Joe, a guy who used to ride around with me a lot. And the old guy was being sued. He had a $300,000 lawsuit against him. And they were trying to take his house. And he was real worried because he was in his 80s. He was a retired Coast Guard guy, and he had a little money and he had a little property, but he wasn't a really rich man, but he was comfortable. And these folks were taking advantage of him and tried to sue him. So we did this lien on his property and did the freedom documents and all. And they dismissed the lawsuit. $300,000, they dropped it. We stamped it deficient on every page and sent it in to buy him a little time so we could get his documents, and they just dismissed the lawsuit. So we got the documents filed, and we made him first in line, first in time, true holder in due course on all of his property. And sat there a while, and he got ill, and his daughter put him in a nursing home. So one day I got this call, and they said, well, we're trying to do a loan on this house, and we need you to release this lien. We can't make the loan with that lien on it. And I told the mortgage company, I said, well, I don't know where you got my information. I said, but I didn't put the lien on the house. I said, the man that owns the house put the lien on the house. I just helped him with his documents. I don't have any say-so over that lien whatsoever. But you've got to get this lien off so we can make this mortgage. I said, if the man wants the lien off of his house, I said, he'll take it off. So I got a hold of him. He was in a nursing home, and I got a hold of him, and he said, I don't want my house mortgaged for $80,000. He said, I didn't give anybody permission to do that. See, his daughter had got a power of attorney and was trying to mortgage his house without his permission. He didn't even know about it. So I asked him, I said, do you want the lien lifted? He said, no way, I don't want a mortgage on that house. So they called me back a couple more times, and they said, well, you've got to get this lien off of this house so we can make this mortgage. I said, I've already told you I'm not going to get the lien off the house. And the last time they called back, I told them, I said, listen, this is the bottom line. If you try to manipulate that old man and remove that lien and mortgage his house, I said, I'll come down there to St. Petersburg, Florida, and I will arrest you and I will take your bonds. And they called back a few days later and said, we're not touching this anymore. They couldn't find a way to break the lien. Their attorneys couldn't do it. And it's a very simple thing, but it's a powerful thing. When you're a secured party, your word is your word. When you're a secured party, you have rights that debtors don't have. You have reserved your rights. And they have to abide by those things. And if they don't, they go into dishonor and then they get into a liability position, and that's when we put the hammer on them. So be aware these things are simple, but they're very powerful. You don't have to have all the legalese stuff to win. Actually, I found out it's more powerful if you don't, because it catches them by surprise. I used to do all the legal stuff and write all the legal language and spend 200 hours writing a legal brief and all this kind of stuff, and they're trying to impress the court, and I found out they wasn't impressed at all. They didn't even read it. In most cases, they didn't even read the stuff. So I learned that over the years that sometimes simple language works quite well, and generally does. For me, I use simple language. You'll find that out. Our next document, any other questions about that security agreement? It's a very simple, basic document. You'll find most of my stuff is. I told you this stuff is so easy. So easy a caveman can do it. Okay, the actual and constructive notice is a package of documents, and you'll see in your outline it lists those A through D, I believe it is. And this is a set of instructions to the Treasury, what we're planning to do. It tells them that we're going to use our accounts. And it's very simple. You can read it. I'm not going to read it to you. And you'll see we have a legal signature at the bottom here. And it tells them we're going to charge our accounts for $100 billion, and we're going to use them for the discharge and offset of debt. The whole harmless and indemnity agreement is a very important document here. This document defines the terms. We learned a long time ago that when you're dealing with legal issues, it's important to define your terms, because if you don't define them, somebody will. And they won't define them in your favor. If you get an attorney out there that's trying to beat you in court and you haven't defined your terms, he's going to define them for you, and he's probably going to beat you over the head with the definitions. So you need to make sure that you're on a even footing when you walk into a situation or have to defend yourself by knowing what you've got. Your foundation has to be sound, or you actually won't stand in court. So when we define who we are, we talked about the names earlier. When we define who we are, that's who we are. Who's going to argue with that? What document are you going to bring forward to prove that I'm not who I say I am? Because if you come against me, I want documented evidence. And if you make a claim against me and you don't provide me documented evidence, I'm going to own your house. Literally. I'm going to own everything you have. I'm going to own your bank account. I'm going to own your credit. I'm going to own your airplane and your RV and everything that you got. And that's where balancing the books comes in. And I'm going to show you how easy that is really to do. It's not hard to do at all. It's so simple it slips up on everybody. But where it says, this is another form we use to separate the two entities. We have the debtor and the creditor defined. And if you'll read down in this document, it'll show you places here that talks about listing the name. Where it says all of the variations of the name, I think there are 4 places in this document, where it says variations of the name, put the variations of the name. Now, not all the business you do is in your full legal name. My name is James Timothy Turner, but sometimes I write James Turner, or James T. Turner, or Tim Turner, or J.T. Turner. Use that a lot. Well, do I want to be able to do that? Yeah, I do. So I want to define who those names are, so I define them all. And I put mine, the first time I list my name, James Timothy Turner, I put it with a hyphen and a colon, and then a comma, and then I put it without the hyphen and the colon. Then I listed James hyphen Timothy colon Turner, comma, James Timothy Turner, then comma, James T. Turner, comma, James Turner, J.T. Turner, Tim Turner. And I'll list every variation that I might use my name, because now I'm defining who I am. So if I use those names, they're my names because I defined it. And this is on public record. Now, it comes into play, and it's kind of important with you ladies that have been married. Maybe you've been married and divorced, and maybe you've got some things in your past marriage that are not completed, such as property issues or children or alimony or child support or what have you in your past life under a different name. You might want to list that name in the event that you need to use it, because that defines who you are. And you may not. If you've been divorced and remarried and everything, there's no issues with your former marriage, you might not even want to list it. That's entirely up to you, but that's an option if you need to. I had one lady had 5 names. She called me. She said, I need you to help me do my paperwork. So I went, tried to help her do it. She was in some problems. And she had a birth certificate with one name, a social security with another name, a driver's license with another name. She was doing business through a corporation through another name, and she was using a completely different name. None of the other 4. And so I had to ask her, I said, well, who are you? And she said, well, just pick one. I said, well, it don't work that way. You got to be able to prove who you are. So So I told her, I said, I don't know how to help you. She said, well, just pick a name. I don't care which one you call me. You got to be able to define who you are, folks. And so I highly recommend that you list your names and list them properly. It's not hard to do, but it is a little bit tedious, and you need to do that. Pay attention to that. And I do it for the straw man and the real man. Both ways. Any questions on, well, I got the signature line, of course, again here. The debtor and the creditor have to sign the document. Also, we include a property list with this document as well. And we're going to get our documents converted where we don't have to do that right here soon. If I ever get a day to do it, which is questionable right now. This is another non-negotiable security agreement, which is part of that package. Very simple document there. Just pay attention to the highlights. The highlights tell you how to do everything. The next document we want to talk about is probably my favorite and probably one of the most powerful documents that we have. It's called the Legal Notice and Demand. Now, the Legal Notice and Demand puts these agencies on notice who you are and tells them the rules of engagement if they deal with you. And it also tells them the penalties that are involved if they violate those. And you'll like some of these penalties. Pretty neat agreement. Now, I got this document and the former document that we just went through from a guy named Steve Beto. Some of you may know Steve. He's from Michigan. A very, very sharp guy. He's a paralegal, and he trains the attorneys that practice in the Court of International Trade in New York. He's the one that trains them. He's very knowledgeable on these issues about commerce, and he's a good guy, he's a Christian man, and he gave me these documents when I was in a meeting with him because he saw that we were trying to help people. And he liked what we were trying to do, so he voluntarily gave me the documents to use and said, we can give them to anybody. And so we've spread these across the country. There are a lot of these on file. I've seen a judge just open this document and get up and leave. Just read 2 or 3 pages and get up and leave. Because he knows what it does, just like I do. Puts him in extreme jeopardy. And they don't like to be in liability positions, because it's serious liability. Do I have someone that would like to read? There are 4 pages of this. If somebody would like to read that for me, if you will, I need you to take the mic and do it, and so everybody can hear. I want to read down to where it says billing costs. You start right there where it says attention and warning.
Attention and warning, this is a legal notice and demand, fiat justitia ruat colium. Let right be done through the heavens shall fall. To all state, federal, and international public officials by and through your Secretary of State, name of Secretary, take notice, ignorance of the law is no excuse. This is a contract in admiralty jurisdiction. Take a moment to read this before you proceed any further. I do not wish to speak to you under any circumstances excluding federal judicial review. This title is for your protection. 1. I, one John Lee Doe, free man.
We'll get a little closer to the mic.
Okay.
To the back here.
I, one John Lee Doe, free man, the undersigned, herein request that you present anything that you say to me in writing, signed under penalty of perjury as required by your law, as shown in this instrument. Notice to agent is notice to principal. Notice to principal is notice to agent. Attachments are included and are part of this contract. 2. This notice is in the nature of a Miranda warning. Take due heed of its contents. If for any reason you do not understand any of these statements or warnings, it is incumbent upon you to summon a superior officer, special prosecutor, federal judge, or other competent legal counsel to immediately explain to you the significance of this presentment as per your duties and obligation in respect to this private, formal, notarized, registered statute staple securities instrument. As per Title 11 U.S.C. 501A, 502A, 11 U.S.C. 7001, 7013, and Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Section 8A and 13A, the claim or presumption that I, John Lee Doe, am a debtor to the United States or any of its agencies or subcorporations is forever rebutted by this contract. This rebuttal is a counterclaim in admiralty. Number 3, your failure to timely do so leaves you in a position of accepting full responsibility for any and all liabilities for monetary damages as indicated herein that I incur by any adversely affected injuries caused by your overt or covert actions or the actions of any of your fellow public officers and agents in this or any other relevant matter as described herein. You have 30 days from the date of this document, from the date that this document is received by the clerk of the public record, to respond and rebut the presumptions of this contract by submitting to me signed, certified, authenticated documents of the laws that rebut these presumptions point by point. On and for the record, under penalties of the law, including perjury. This document will be on file in the public record, and the clerk in charge of the public record is charged to distribute this and any and all responsible parties, that is, officers of the court and or law enforcement officers, including local, state, federal, international, multi-jurisdictional, or any and all officers, representatives, contractors, agencies, or any such entity or person that may bring any type of action, whether civil or criminal or other, against me, and whether in this county, state, region, area, country, corporation, federal zone, or any venue and or jurisdiction. Your failure to timely rebut the statements and warnings herein constitute your complete tacit agreement with all statements and warnings contained herein. Your presumptions that I, the undersigned, am a corporate fiction or legal entity and under your corporate United States jurisdiction are now and forever rebutted. 4, I, the undersigned, tendering this document am a private people of posterity, a sovereign personum sojourn by fact, not a 14th Amendment citizen or surety within or subject for or allegiance to your corporate United States or to any de facto compact corporate commercial states contracting therein, only to the United States of America, nonetheless carrying with me exclusive, original, sovereign jurisdiction and venue, having one Supreme Court and United States Court of International Trade. This is a matter of public record, tended by way of certified mail to your state Secretary of State. These pages are recorded upon library records and books in Register of Deeds offices, including but not limited to your county, and list 3 or 4 surrounding counties. 5, I, the undersigned, now tendering this binding legal notice and demand in hand, am not a surety under your jurisdiction, nor a subject under your corporate veil, color of law, venue, being acknowledged by silence and acquiescence of Secretary of State, or name of Secretary, respectively your state Secretary of State, also but not limited to any public officers, agents, contractors, assigns, employees, and subsidiaries of your office. Regardless, my legal notice and demand tendered by certified mail with library book number and page affixed. Number 6, which silence of corporate office, Secretary of State, ratifies severance of any nexus or relationship to de facto corporate commercial state of offices being fraudulent conveyance by operating under color of authority upon affiant. Let this be known by the good faith Oxford doctrine to all men and women. I do not consent to any warrantless searches or searches that are not compliant with the Constitution for the United States of America and or all of the amendments of the Honorable Bill of Rights, whether of my dwellings, cars, land, craft, watercraft, aircraft, me, mine, current location, property, hotel rooms, apartments, business records, businesses or my machinery, vehicles, equipment, supplies, buildings, grounds, land in my private possession or control, past, present, and future, now and forevermore, so help you God. 7. By this record, let it be known that I do not at any time waive any rights or protections as acknowledged by the aforementioned Constitution and or Honorable Bill of Rights, nonetheless demanding that you protect these as you swore an oath to do so. I accept your lawfully required oath of office, bonds of any type, insurance policies, and property of any type for my protection and making whole. Furthermore, should you witness any public officers at any time, at this time, or any time past, present, or future, violate any of my rights or protections, it is your sworn duty of oath to immediately arrest or have them arrested. You are legally required to charge them as you should any lawbreaker, regardless of officer's title, rank, uniform, cloak, badge, position, stature, or office, and you should henceforth be accountable for monetary damages from, but not limited to, your monetary liability, your corporate bond, compensatory costs, punitive procurements, and sanctioned by attorney attributions. Note, a true and correct notarized copy of this statute, staple, securities instrument is safely deposited in the Register of Deeds office in your county, your state. This security agreement has also been delivered to several trusted friends and accompanied by sworn affidavits certifying my policy of presenting this security instrument to each and every public officer who approaches me violating my inalienable rights, including but not limited to my right of liberty and freedom, movement upon any common pathway of travel. I have a lawful right to travel by whatever means via land, sea, or air without any officer, agent, employee, attorney, or judge willfully causing adverse effects or damages upon me by an arrest, detainment, restraint, or deprivation. I will be granted the status and treatment of a foreign sovereign, a foreign diplomat by all customs officials. This document or the deposited copy becomes an evidentiary document certified herein, or if now fully reproduced, should any court action be taken upon me as caused by your acts under color of law with you, your officers, and employees. Take note, you are now monetarily liable in your personal and corporate capacity. I, John Lee Doe, freeman, the undersigned, a sovereign, notwithstanding anything contrary, abide by all laws in accordance with the aforementioned Constitution and Honorable Bill of Rights, which are applicable to sovereigns. I, John Lee Doe, wish no harm to any man. You agree by your non-response to uphold my right to travel, or you must rebut my presumption by lawfully documented evidence in law, on and for the record, under oath and penalty of perjury, within 30 days, as aforementioned in this Admiralty contract. 9. Be warned, noticed, and advised that I, upon, in addition to constitutional limits of the Constitution of the United States of America and or the Honorable Bill of Rights, governmental authority, the rights and protections guaranteed under uniform commercial codes, common equity law, laws of admiralty, and commercial liens and levies pursuant to, but not limited to, Title 42 Civil Rights, Title 18 USCA Criminal Codes, Title 28 USCA Criminal Codes, and additionally, your state constitution penal codes, inasmuch as they are in compliance with the aforementioned Constitution and or Bill of Rights. There can be no violation of any of these laws unless there is a victim consisting of a natural flesh and blood man or woman who has been damaged. When there is no victim, there is no crime or law broken. Unless this is rebutted within the time limit contained herein and the conditions of the rebuttal are met, you or any of your any representative in any capacity of any agency, government, corporation, or the like agree to abide by this contract any time that you interact with me. I, John Lee Doe, freeman, the undersigned, am a lawful, majority-age, clear head, and sound mind. Number 10, remember, you took a solemn, binding oath to protect and defend the original Constitution for the United States of America, 1787, adopted circa 1791. Violations of said oath is perjury, being a bad faith doctrine by constructive treason and immoral dishonor, infra, paragraph 13, 14, and 15. I accept said oath of office that you have sworn to uphold. I declare that any and all presumptions that I am a citizen, subject, resident, participant, legal entity, straw man, fiction, or any such, or any and all jurisdictions of the United States, or any of its subdivisions, agencies, entities, departments, subsidiaries, are now and forever rebutted. You may rebut my presumptions by submitting certified copies of lawful documents that have been certified by your state's attorney while under oath and on the official record and under penalty of perjury, and waiving all immunities from prosecution. You have 30 days to rebut my statements as indicated herein, or my statements will stand as true, lawful, and legal in all of your courts and or hearings. 11. This legal and timely notice, declaration, and demand is prima facie evidence of sufficient notice of grace. The terms and conditions of this presentment agreement are a quasi-contract under the Uniform Commercial Code and Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. These terms and conditions are not subject to any or all immunities that you may claim should you or in any way violate my rights or allow violations by others. Your corporate commercial acts against me or mine and your failures to act on behalf of me or mine are ultra vires and injurious by willful and gross negligence. 12. The liability is upon you and your respondent superior and upon others, including any and all local, state, federal, regional, federal, multi-jurisdictional, international, and or corporate agencies and or persons of the foregoing involved directly or indirectly with you via any nexus acting with you, and said liability shall be satisfied jointly and or severally at my discretion. You are sworn to your oath of office, and I accept your oath of office and your responsibility to uphold the rights of me and mine at all times.
Thank you. Okay. Do you think we rebutted the presumptions? The presumptions of the courts and of these agencies is that you are a debtor and that you're a slave to the corporation. And they pretty much own you. The law says that if we rebut a presumption, and we're doing it in writing, and our presumption is not rebutted, that our presumption stands as law, as truth in the law. Do you think they're going to rebut this? Now, we give them up to 30 days, depending on what the legal time for notification is in your state. I put 21 on mine. So make sure you keep it within the legal notification time in your state. Washington State, 5 days. But whatever time period you need to put in there, make sure you include that. That's why it's highlighted. Most states, 21 days is fine, but if you have any question, go with 30 days. 30 days is good everywhere. Now, for them to rebut this, they're going to have to do it with documented evidence. Where are they going to get documented evidence that they don't have to abide by the Constitution and Bill of Rights? It doesn't exist. Yes. Yes, Deborah, go ahead.
Sorry, we referenced their oath of office in this document.
Yes.
When they take their oath, are they pledging to the Constitution of or for?
They're probably pledging to the Constitution of, but it still includes protections under the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. Those protections are still there even in their Constitution. So it doesn't matter which one in reality, they still have to uphold it. Okay? So they can't do away with it. That's why it's in their documents. It's impossible. They don't have the authority to overrule the law. Remember, we're dealing with natural law. We don't deal with courts of equity and that type of law. Once you become a secured party, you're under natural law or constitutional law, which is protecting the rights, the God-given rights. They're not given to you by the government, and they can't be taken away by the government. The only reason we're not exercising those rights is because of the contractual agreements that we have made. We're reestablishing the contract. That's what we're doing here. Now, if they want to rebut it, they let them try. I've never had one of these rebutted. Now, can a judge, a court, an attorney, a bank, or any agency out there refuse to give you your rights under the Bill of Rights? Sure they can. But what happens when they do? They take on a personal liability. Now, the little old phrase in here called respondeat superior is very, very powerful. That means that if Barney commits an act against your rights and trespasses your rights, that Andy is responsible for it. That means if a police officer trespasses against your rights, that means that the mayor, if he's the police commissioner, and quite often is, in a lot of smaller cities, and the police chief is responsible. Now this can get to be very interesting sometimes, because I found one of the maxims of law is that big fish always eat the little fish. They always do it. The guy up here sitting up here in this big state job is not going to take the fall for a police officer way down here, or a trooper. The head of the highway patrol in your state is not going to take a fall because a trooper stepped on your rights. The trooper is going to have a bad day when you bring down the heat on him, because his boss is not going to take the heat for him, because he's not going to jeopardize his job, his big, cushy, nice job of retirement. He's not going to risk it, because they won't do it. They'll turn on they'll eat their young in a minute if you put the heat on them right. They do. They'll turn on their own. I've seen them do it many times. We have an officer down there in Panhandle, Florida, ex-officer, used to be with Game and Fish. The guy was a tyrant. He just absolutely violated every possible law it could be many, many times, and nobody would take him on and deal with him. So one day, I was sitting in a restaurant having a cup of coffee and talking to some friends, and this guy came in. He was a fisherman, had about a 6th grade education, didn't know anything, and he had been trounced upon by this guy. And I knew the guy. And so he told me, he said, man, he took my livelihood away from me, and he did it illegally. This guy had went down and he had built a net to go fishing with. He called the Game and Fish down to check the net while he still had it stretched out. Before he ever put it on the boat, they came down there and said it was fine. He put it on the boat. It was checked several times for the next 8 months while he fished with it. And then one day this guy checks the net and decides it's illegal. Now, after his own department had checked it many times and approved it, he decides it's not legal. And he took the guy's fishing equipment. He took his boat. He fined him thousands of dollars and tried to have a permanent revocation of his license. The boy couldn't, while this thing was pending trial, he couldn't even fish. He was suspended from fishing. And this went on for months. So I looked at the case and told him, I said, well, there may be some. He was going to hire an attorney. I said, bad move. The attorney's not going to help you with this. I said, but you might can do this. And so I encouraged him to write a little letter, a little simple letter. And we let the head of the Game and Fish know that this man has violated the law, this is how he did it, and this is what we're going to do about it. And since you are the respondee superior for this guy, we're coming after your bond, and we're coming after your job, unless you deal with this issue. But we gave him an option. If you'll deal with this man and take care of him and restore this man back to where he's supposed to be and leave him alone, then we will drop this case against you, but we're going to take your job if you don't do it. 2 or 3 weeks later, I saw the guy. I worked around him. And I saw him one day, and he was stopped on the side of the road at an accident. We happened to be at an accident that day, and he stopped and saw me, and he said, "I'm never going to write another ticket the longest day I live. I don't care what they do. I don't care if they commit murder standing in front of me. I wouldn't even try to arrest them anymore." He said, "The department has really done me wrong." Well, I said, "Well," his name was Gashi. I said, "Gashi, what happened?" I played dumb. He didn't know I was the one that helped with the letter. So I said, "Well, my goodness, what's wrong?" He said, "This fisherman wrote a letter to my boss, and my boss called me in the other day and told me," he said, "listen, you're on your own. We're not going to back you. You violated the law. We've done some investigating and found out that you violated the law, and I'm not going down for you. So to represent yourself, you're going to have to go hire an attorney, and it's going to cost you $400 an hour." That's what he had to pay an attorney, $400 an hour to defend him in this case. Went on for about 7 or 8 months, and it finally went to trial, and he lost. And so the department fired him. So he had to pay all these thousands of dollars to an attorney to defend his position, to keep from losing everything that he had. Still lost. And he lost his job and a big chunk of his retirement because he violated the guy's rights. You can't do that. Even in our society today, you can't violate people's rights without a liability. And so the guy no longer works for the department. He doesn't go down and terrorize people. Now, he said, "I don't understand why in the world they want." I said, "Well, sometimes you just don't need to be quite so hard on people." Because he was a tyrant. And so sometimes things turn around, and sometimes the books get balanced when you know how to apply the right pressure. Now, I used to work for the state of Florida. Worked down there with them for 5 years down in South Florida. And I got injured, and they fired me from my job and did it illegally. They did it because I wasn't a team player, is what they would tell me. But they fired me because I got injured. Although they're the ones that tried to kill me, they injured me and tried to take me out, and I was a little bit too stubborn to die. So I came out okay in the incident, but I did get hurt pretty bad, and they fired me. Well, I went to see the superintendent, and he let me know they wanted to fire me. And I told him that day, I said, "Mr. Farkas," his name was David Farkas, low-life piece of garbage, don't mind telling you. And he said, "We're going to fire you." And I told him that day, I said, "Well, you don't have any reason to fire me." He said, "Well, we're going to fire you anyway." I said, "Well, you would rather slap Saddam Hussein in the hand with a face with a handful of sand spurs than to piss me off." That's just what I told him. He said, "Nothing you can do. We're the state of Florida." I said, "No, you're not the state of Florida, and we'll see." 3 months later, he called me, and he said, "Brother Turner." That's what he called me. I said, "Who is this?" He said, "This is David Farkas." He said, "Brother Turner, one Christian brother to another, I need some help." I said, "Well, what do you need my help for? You're the state of Florida." He said, "Well, it appears that you put a lot of heat on me." And he said, I'm about to lose my job." And he said, "I really need your help." And I told him, I said, "Mr. Farkas, if you didn't do anything wrong," I said, "you don't have a thing to worry about. Have a nice life," and hung up on him. Well, he lost his job. How long have we got? I'll finish up the story in 3 minutes. Okay. But anyway, he lost his job, and they fired 7 other people that were involved in firing me, the state of Florida, because I put the big fish in jeopardy because of their actions. Okay? But just to show you that God has a sense of humor, this man lost a $106,000 a year job. His wife left him. Took his family. He had a $106,000 a year job, an unlimited expense account, credit card with the state. He lived in a 3-bedroom brick home that was maintained for him, with everything paid for. He ended up with a $25,000 a year job working selling auto parts at Toyota place in Fort Myers, Florida. We eventually got reestablished back in law enforcement and became a deputy and went to work for Hendry County Sheriff's Department. And just so happened that the administrator of that department was a very good friend of mine. And so I called Duke up. I said, Duke, I heard that this guy Farkas just went to work for you. He said, you know him? I said, yeah, that's the buzzard that fired me. He said, oh, really? He said, he's going to have an interesting career. So God does have a sense of humor. I think we need to change our... Okay, well, if you want to go ahead and change it right now is a good time.